Hello there everybody, how is it going and how have you been? I am EuclideanSqd, and we're back here in Duel Links to check out a brand new roaming duelist, Fantastic Pegasus. Now, much like other roaming duelists, he shows up, you duel him, he leaves, repeat, that's the course of the event. And like other sort of special versions of existing characters, he's basically just Pegasus but with a harder deck and slightly different reward cards compared to what you will find at the gate. But one thing I have noticed with this event is that maybe it's just bad luck for me, but he takes a long time to respawn. I mean, like seriously, I wanted to record this like a day ago, but I waited like an hour and a half. I participated in some duels, and he just would not show up. I don't know why. Maybe it really was just awful RNG luck, but he wouldn't show. But regardless, this is the farming deck that we will be using today. This was created by a user by the name of Cladwin over on the Duel Links meta website. I will put, as usual, a link will be down in the description below for anybody who wants to go and check out the original recipe. And actually, give me just a second. I want to double check and make sure. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that I got their username correct. It is Cladwin. At least when I went and checked, it was top comment, but could have moved. Anyway, this is the deck. It's for the last turn, as usual, you will be using Gravekeeper's Vassal and Union Attack with the hopes of doing over 10,000 damage and taking advantage of Vassal doing effect damage instead of battle damage. But you will notice that there is no secret path to the treasures in this deck. And in fact, it is quite different compared to most other farming decks that I've been using recently, so it's a quite nice change of pace. In fact, this deck takes advantage of the Subterror Behemoth monsters to effectively just remove everything off of Pegasus's field constantly. So specifically, Subterror Behemoth Umastrix will be used to banish his monsters one by one, while Subterror Behemoth Stigakraken will be destroying his set cards, so his set spell and trap cards. That's the basic cycle. At the beginning of the duel, you will likely need to set Golem Sentry and then use its effect to return Pegasus's Toon monsters back into his hand. Or just any monsters that he summons back into his hand. Since Golem Sentry, when it's flip summoned, it does exactly that, and then it can put itself back in face down defense position, kind of like the Subterrors can. We have two Deslocutas, which when they are flip summoned, you get to draw a card, and then you can again put them back in face down defense position. And then finally, three Subterror Nemesis Warriors, specifically to help you search out an Umastrix or a Stigakraken as needed. Now, looking at this deck, it does seem a little bit odd that it's relying on such weak monsters, but it's also capitalizing on one big fact about Pegasus's deck. A huge majority of the monsters that he will be able to play are Toon monsters, and they specifically are not allowed to attack on the turn that they are summoned. Or maybe some Toons can do that, but all of the Toons that Pegasus will be using cannot do that. Like, they have to wait a turn before they can attack, which lets you take advantage of things like Golem Sentry to just continually kick them back into his hand and just kind of reset the timer so that they can't attack ever, or just Umastrix to banish them outright. Which is nice because his Toons are also allowed to attack directly in a lot of cases, so no matter what you have set, if you don't get rid of it, he can just attack you. And that's the sort of general defensive strategy. There is one monster, well technically two monsters in his deck that don't follow this strategy just because they're not Toons, but I will cover those more during the duel when and if they show up. Specifically, just in case one of his Toons does manage to try and get off an attack, because sometimes he's able to play two Toons in one turn. That's a tongue twister. I have included two security orbs just to stop their attack. The original recipe instead called for a copy of Enemy Controller and a Paleozoic Canadia, but I decided to downgrade to security orbs just to make the deck a little bit cheaper to assemble, as I do. And then finally, you will also need a Subterror Final Battle for the last turn of the duel, specifically so you can use its third effect to make the attack and defense of a Subterror monster equal to its combined original attack and defense until the end of the turn. Specifically, you will be using Subterror Final Battle on an Umastrix, ideally. Stigakraken also kind of works. But basically, you use that effect on Umastrix, it goes up to 4700 attack, and then combined with the 2 union attacks, that is more than enough to put Vassal over 10,000, and then you attack directly for the win, because ideally you'll have been removing his monsters constantly with Umastrix's effect for the entirety of the duel. Stiga Kraken kind of fits the bill as well. The problem is that its attack will total up to 4,000, and that's not quite enough to put Vassal over 10k if you only have a Stiga Kraken. But 8,700 total is still going to net you a fair amount of points. You also don't need 2 final battles. I put 2 final battles in because 1, the original recipe has 2, and 2, I feel a little more comfortable having 2 because I can use 1 on a Stiga Kraken and 1 on an Umastrix, for example. But yeah, if you only have 1 Subterra final battle, you can do perfectly well with just the 1. Same thing with Umastrix. If you only have the 1, you can make do without. The only super rare you definitely need 2 copies of is Union Attack, just because there's no way for Vassal to get over 10,000 with 1 Union Attack in this deck. So yeah, technically 6 super rares, but you can easily go down to 4 if you only have 1 copy of each. And yeah, oh, when it comes to skill, this deck doesn't explicitly need any particular skill, because I was just leveling up the Loomis and Umbra pair. I just set it to their Draw Scent Spell Trap skill, just on the off chance if Pegasus starts, just somehow fills the field with Toons and starts attacking me directly, I'd just like a chance to try and draw a Security Orb to slow him down a little bit. But you can use whatever skill you want. Life Point Boost Alpha, Restart, whatever you want. Skill doesn't matter for this deck. So, with that, let's go ahead and take a look at his reward cards. And I'm not entirely sure which ones are unique to Fantastic Pegasus and which ones aren't. I have a feeling it's just these last 2, but I'm going to go through all of them anyway. He actually has no normal cards, which is kind of nice considering the normal cards are generally trash. But to start with, his first rare is an equipped spell called Sword of Deep-Seated. A monster card equipped to this card increases its attack and defense by 500 points, and when this card is sent to the graveyard, it is placed on top of your deck. So just be mindful that whenever it's destroyed, you effectively lose out on your next draw because you'll just be getting this back instead. So not super fantastic, but a 500 attack and defense point boost is kind of nice. Moving on, we have Jigen Bakudan, a level 2 Fire Pyro with 200 attack and 1000 defense. It is a flip effect monster, and when it is flipped, you offer it as a tribute during your standby phase to destroy all monsters on your side of the field, and inflict direct damage equal to half of the total attack of the destroyed cards, excluding this monster, to your opponent's life points. So basically, if it gets flipped face up but is not destroyed during your opponent's turn, you contribute it at the start of your turn, destroy all of your monsters, and then half of their attack is dealt to your opponent as damage. So, pretty high cost. Maybe you can get a decent amount of damage off, but I personally wouldn't use it just because it's kind of difficult to get the effect to that point in the first place. And then his final rare is a level 4 Water Reptile, Toon Alligator, 800 attack, 1600 defense. It doesn't have an effect. It's a decent enough reptile in terms of defense. Probably better ones out there, but if you don't have any, this thing can do. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, there's 2 more rares. I don't know why I thought that was the last one. His next rare is Toon Buster Blader, a level 7 Earth Warrior, 2600 attack, 2300 defense. As the name implies, it is a Toon. It is not allowed to attack the turn that it is summoned. It gains 500 attack and just 500 attack for each dragon type monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. And if you control Toon World and your opponent doesn't have any Toons, this thing can attack your opponent directly. And it's specifically that second effect that can make Pegasus' deck a bit scary if you don't control his monsters very well. Because pretty much every Toon in his deck has that. If he has Toon World in play, it can just attack you directly skill. And I know he's got at least 1 copy. He probably has 2, just considering how quickly he seems to play it in some duels. But again, that could just be down to my bad luck, and he just draws it pretty early every single time. Moving on, we have Manga Ryoran, a level 7 fire dragon, 2200 attack, 2600 defense. Despite the name, it also counts as a Toon monster. Cannot be normal summoned set. Cannot be special summoned unless you control a face-up Toon world. And to be special summoned from your hand, you have to tribute the same number of monsters that would normally be needed for a tribute summon, which is typically 2 because it's level 7. It's a bit of a weirdly worded effect, but Toons were introduced very early on, so quite a few Toons were introduced very early on in the card game, and so the wording hadn't quite been standardized yet, but basically you special summon it by tributing 2 monsters. This card cannot attack the turn that it is special summoned. You have to pay 500 life points to declare an attack with this card. If Toon World on the field is destroyed, Manga Ryoran is also destroyed. This card can attack your opponent directly unless they control a Toon monster, but if they do control a Toon, it has to attack a Toon first. So, fairly complicated, but in effect, pay 500 life points whenever it attacks. It can attack directly if they don't have any Toons, must attack a Toon otherwise. And if Toon World is destroyed, this thing blows up along with it. Moving on to the super rares, we have Toon World, a continuous spell that simply says you activate it by paying 1,000 life points. It doesn't have any further effects, but it was required to play a lot of the early Toon monsters in the game, like Manga Ryoran, and the next super rare, Toon Mermaid. A level 4 Water Aqua, 1400 attack, 1500 defense. Cannot be normal summoned set, can't be special summoned unless you control a face-up Toon World, and has to be special summoned by attributing the same number of monsters needed for a tribute summon, normally 0. That is an incredibly weirdly worded effect. I don't know why it doesn't just... Again, it was introduced a lot really early on in the game, so they were probably just like copy-pasting text for Toons, I guess. I don't know. But basically, you just special summon it while you control Toon World. This card cannot attack the turn that it is special summoned. You must pay 500 life points to attack, and same thing with Manga Ryoran. It's destroyed if Toon World is destroyed. It can attack directly unless your opponent controls a Toon of their own, and if they do control a Toon, this thing has to attack the Toon. There you go. Thankfully, these last remaining Toons were introduced later in the game, and they don't have nearly as complicated of an effect. So the next super rare is Toon Barrel Dragon, a level 7 Dark Machine, 2600 attack, 2200 defense. Cannot attack the turn that it is summoned. While you control a Toon World and your opponent controls no Toon monsters, this card can attack your opponent directly. And once per turn, you can target a card on the field, toss a coin 3 times, and destroy it if at least 2 of the results are heads. So basically a combination of Barrel Dragon's effect and the typical Toon effects, as is most of the newer Toons. Moving on, the last super rare, and also one of the cards unique to this event, is Toon Gemini Elf, a level 4 Earth Spellcaster, 1900 attack, 900 defense. Cannot attack the turn that it is summoned. If Toon World on the field is destroyed, destroy this card. While you control Toon World and your opponent controls no Toon monsters, this card can attack your opponent directly. And very dangerously, if this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. Note that does not have to be a direct attack, just whenever it does battle damage. So if you don't want to lug around Toon World, and you're willing to let this thing wait a turn, that's a 1900 spellcaster, of which there's plenty of cards to increase the power of spellcasters, that discard cards out of your opponent's hand whenever they deal battle damage. Pretty nasty little card. And then finally, his ultra rare is Toon Cyber Dragon, a level 5 light machine, 2100 attack, 1600 defense. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. It cannot attack the turn that it is summoned, and while you control Toon World and your opponent controls no Toon monsters, this card can attack your opponent directly. So, pretty good little card as well. I really like both Toon Cyber Dragon and Toon Gemini Elf. If I had to pick which one I liked more, it would probably be Gemini Elf, just because discarding cards from your opponent's hand is pretty cool, and there's lots of spellcaster support. But honestly, Toon Cyber Dragon is pretty awesome as well. Like, it's a level 5 that you can easily special summon, so it makes it great for synchro summoning, or you special summon it and then tribute it for something bigger and scarier. lots of flexibility with Toons Cyber Dragon as well. So, let's go ahead and have a practice farming duel, just to show off how this deck is supposed to work. Excuse me as I had to take a little drink of water. Now, admittedly, the strategy for this deck isn't quite as set in stone as some of the other farming decks are. You just kind of have to play things by ear as it goes. And this is not a fantastic starting hand, honestly. I'm hoping my first draw will be a little bit better. He's already starting with a Toon World and a Gemini Elf. That is not at all what I wanted. Okay. Well, I have a security orb to save me, just in case. There's no point in trying to play Stygikraken early, so let's just go ahead and summon Nemesis Warrior and end my turn. Now, oh, he's attacking Nemesis Warrior? That's weird. Usually whenever Pegasus can attack directly, he tries to attack directly. Okay, well, I'm gonna security orb you in the hopes that I can still get the victory by effect damage only reward. So let's see here. Another Nemesis Warrior. Alright, this is actually not bad. Because what I can do is I can go to my battle phase, I can have one destroy the Gemini Elf. And then I can use its effect. And this is a bit complicated, and you do have to be a little bit careful if you're using Nemesis Warrior. But specifically, he says that during either player's turn, you can send one Subterror monster from your deck to the graveyard, tribute discard and at least one other monster, so the total levels tributed equal or exceed the level of that Subterror monster, and then you can special summon the Subterror. So in other words, I'm going to send the level 7 Umastrix to the grave. I'm then going to tribute that Nemesis Warrior and the other one, which is a total of 8, to then special summon the Umastrix in face down defense mode. So now I'm actually pretty well set, because any Toons that Pegasus is going to play have to wait a turn before they can attack. And then I can use Umastrix's effect to banish the Toon in that instant, and Pegasus is being very weird, but okay. And I'm kind of set. Outside of one possibility. And again, I will get to that if he tries doing it. But basically, to explain what he just did, he special summoned a Toon Cyber Dragon, tributed it to set another Toon Cyber Dragon, then tributes that Toon Cyber Dragon to special summon Toon Summon Skull. Okay, well, I'm just going to make things easy and set Deslakuta, then use Umastrix to banish the Toon Summon Skull. Do not, once you have an Umastrix on play, I would say do not use any Nemesis Warrior's effects in the graveyard. Here, hold on. I'm trying to... two different things happening at once. In fact, just don't ever use Nemesis Warrior's effect while he's in the graveyard in this duel. Specifically what it does is, if a Subterror Behemoth is... I think it's if it's flipped face up. Actually, I think I can check right now. Can't I? Yes, I can. So if a Subterror Behemoth monster is flipped face up while this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon it. Don't do that. Because one of the problems with this deck is that if you don't play very carefully, it's very easy to accidentally fill up all 3 of your monster card zones and then have no place for Gravekeeper's Vassal. Accidentally summoning Nemesis Warrior is one such way to accidentally fill your entire field. So don't ever use Nemesis Warrior's effect when one is in the graveyard. Because odds are you probably won't need to. But again, you kind of have to play by ear with this deck. Now what I'm going to do is that because I set a monster, and as a result all of my monsters are face down, I can now special summon Subterror Behemoth Stygikraken from my hand. So it's specifically this part of the effect. When a face-up monster you control is flipped face down, if you control no face-ups, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position, and like other Subterror Behemoths, once per turn, it can flip itself face down. So now I have a means of knocking out Pegasus's set spell and trap cards and banishing his monsters so that I don't have to worry about it. And at this point, I'm actually kind of set. Like, once I've gotten to this point in a farming attempt, I've never lost. I mean, you know, knock on wood, obviously, but... So we banish that thing. Go ahead and set Umistrix. Do not flip Stigokraken face up if he has no set spell and trap cards. Because if you accidentally activate Stigokraken's effect, you have to destroy set cards. Here. Specifically, you can target set cards on the field equal to the number of Subterra Behemoth monsters you control and destroy them. So when you flip Stigokraken face up, you can target one set card and destroy it. Also be mindful that it has to be equal to the number of Subterra Behemoths. So if you leave Umistrix face up and then flip Stigokraken up, you would have to destroy two set cards. Doesn't have to be spell and traps, but that's typically what Stigokraken is going to be here for during this farming, is to take out Pegasus' spell and traps. And I totally forgot to flip Deslakuta and get a free draw, because I was talking too much. There's a Golem Sentry. Golem Sentry is here for the early game. Umistrix is basically a better version of Golem Sentry since it banishes instead of just sending it back to Pegasus' hand. I'm going to go ahead and activate Deslakuta, set it again, and let's actually go over this card that I just banished. Millennium Eyes Illusionist. This thing can be kind of annoying, because as a quick effect, Pegasus can discard it, target any one effect monster you control, well, his opponent, which is you, and then equip that target to either an Eyes Restrict fusion monster or a Relinquish that he controls, as though it were equipped by that monster's effect. So basically, he can discard it to just instantly activate Relinquish's effect to steal one of your monsters and absorb it, and set its stats equal to that thing. Additionally, if an Eyes Restrict fusion monster or a Relinquish is special summoned, and this thing is in his graveyard, it forcefully adds itself back into his hand. So, very nasty card, which brings up the non-Toons in his deck. In case you couldn't tell, it's Relinquished, as well as, what was it? Millennium Eyes Restrict? Which I think it's a fusion monster of Relinquished and any effect monster. But yeah, those two things are the non-Toons in his deck, and those pose a lot more of a threat to this strategy than his Toons do. Especially the Millennium Eyes Restrict. I'm really hoping that he doesn't special summon one, because I'm going to have to play very carefully around it, and I am forgetting to activate Deslakuta to speed this up. But in a nutshell, and I'm probably missing some little bits of the effect, but basically the way Millennium Eyes Restrict works is that when one of your monsters activates their effects, like his opponent, which is you, activates an effect, he can chain Millennium Eyes Restrict to that effect, equip that effect monster onto Millennium Eyes Restrict, and then every monster with that name has its effect negated. So basically, if I were to flip Deslakuta and Millennium Eyes Restrict steals it, not only is that instance of Deslakuta's effect negated, I can't use it anymore while Deslakuta is still equipped to Millennium Eyes Restrict. And the scary part is that it can just do that, like, once per turn at least, which is good, but it can just do that in response to any effect monster. So if you try, like, if the first effect monster you do is Umistrix, and it steals that, like, basically the only way to get rid of it at that point is a Golem Sentry. So, in other words, when you see Eyes Restrict show up, just be very careful about when you activate your effect monsters. Whenever he does play it, I've noticed that Pegasus tries to go after the first effect monster that activates. So you can bait Millennium Eyes Restrict's effect with something like a Deslakuta or a Golem Sentry, and then banish it with an Umistrix in the same turn, but it has to be in the same turn. Otherwise, if you just keep taking out his set cards, for some weird reason, Pegasus keeps setting his Black Eyes, or what was it? Black Illusion Ritual, that's it. He keeps setting his ritual card to summon Relinquished, as well as his special fusion card that he uses to summon Millenniumize Restrict. I don't know why he sets them instead of just playing them, but he does. But that gives you an opportunity to try and destroy them before you can use it with Sticker Kraken. So, I'm going to go ahead and activate this Lakuta one more time, and then we're going to start going into preparation mode. So, let's go ahead and discard a Nemesis Warrior. Sure, don't need them anymore. Don't have to worry about that Toon. It's not allowed to attack on the first turn that's summoned, so we just go ahead and banish it. And now, to clear space on the field for Gravekeeper's Vassal, and this is actually where having a second Umastrix can come in handy, I'm going to set my second one by tributing the first and Deslakuta. If you don't have a second Umastrix, I'm not entirely sure how you can clear up a field spot. So if you're only using one, you may have to forego having a Deslakuta to help with your draw speed, and for the sake of having, you know, an Umastrix to deal with Pegasus's monsters and a Sticker Kraken to deal with his back row. But if you have two, just go ahead and do what I just did to clear a slot for it without losing the ability of Umastrix. And unfortunately, as soon as I do that, he decides to activate the Relinquished Fusion, which is a quick play spell, which lets him summon the Millenniumize Restrict. So, now we're going to have to deal with this, and I can actually double check if what I thought was its effect is its effect. But first, this thing. I did not realize there were so many like monster-specific fusion cards in the game, but this thing works a lot like Neos Fusion and Red Eyes Fusion. Specifically, it is meant to fusion summon an Eyes Restrict fusion monster, kind of like how Red Eyes Fusion is meant to fusion summon a Red Eyes fusion monster. But it fusion summons an Eyes Restrict from his extra deck by banishing materials from his hand, field, or graveyard. So, pretty much once he has the material, there's no way to get rid of it unless you've already banished it. And then during your main phase, he can banish this card from his graveyard, target an effect monster your opponent controls, equip that target to an Eyes Restrict fusion monster or a Relinquished he controls, as if it were equipped by that monster's effect. But he can only use each effect of Relinquished fusion once per turn. So basically, once it's in the grave, he can banish it to give his Millenniumize Restrict a second use of its absorbing effect every turn, or for that turn. It's very complicated, and I'm sorry if this is confusing some people. But basically, once he uses this, you really got to play carefully, and I'm going to see if I can figure out a way. But first, this is Millenniumize Restrict. Level 1 Dark Spellcaster, no attack and defense, requires Relinquished and any effect monster. And like I said, once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, target one effect monster your opponent controls, or is in their graveyard technically. Equip that target to this card that he controls. It gains attack and defense equal to the equipped monsters, and monsters with the equipped monsters' names cannot attack or activate their effects on the field. Can't activate their effects, basically. Which means, if I were to try and flip Umastrix face up right now to banish it, he's going to use its effect to just absorb Umastrix, and then I'm screwed. Likewise, because of this Relinquished Fusion, I think he would have to use that during his turn. Yeah, I don't think you can use a quick play spell's effect in the graveyard to play during your opponent's turn. I think it's only from your hand are you allowed to play it during your opponent's turn. Basically, right now, he has two possibilities to absorb effect monsters. Okay. Trying to think of what to do here. I think the best thing to do is to set a Golem Sentry. If I still had Deslakuta, I could bait out an absorbing effect with that, but I'm going to set a Golem Sentry. And he's just going to summon another one. Okay, I guess this is a failed farm. And yeah, that's the problem, is that they're all in... is that he fusion summons them in defense mode, so I can't deal battle damage with this. So I guess, if you want to make absolutely sure that this works, you can include a secret pass to the treasure, but... okay, so... well, maybe he'll chain both and try to absorb something out of the graveyard. Let's go ahead and try using a Golem Sentry. Try and kick a Millenniumizer Strict away. He's going to absorb it. And... nope. Okay. Yep. Okay. If I just waited one more turn with Deslakuta, I probably could have gotten around this. Actually, no, I couldn't, because he would have just summoned the second Millenniumizer Strict, and then I would have been in the same predicament. I just needed one more turn. Okay, then. Do I have any way out of this? Because I'm only allowed to use Umistrix's effect once per turn. This is actually where Canadia would have come in really handy, because I could have just set one of them. And he didn't chain the other one, unfortunately. So... yeah, I have no way of getting out of this. Thanks, Pegasus. It is a perfect win rate up until the camera turned on. Why am I not surprised with you? Okay. Well, basically what you should do on the final turn... actually, I wonder... no, because it's still going to leave just one. Yeah, and Union Attack only allows me to attack with the monster targeted by its effect. Well, I'm just kind of curious to see what happens if he does anything with it. Because, I mean, I've lost anyway, but the idea is that I would play Vassal, use Union Attacks on it, and it doesn't look like he's doing it, so... I'll go ahead and flip this. No. Yeah, I got... actually... no. No. Any possibility I can think of would have just... if he didn't summon the second one, I could have weaseled out of this, but nope. Okay, well, let's just pretend that this Subterra Nemesis Warrior is Vassal. You would use your 2 Union Attacks on it. Come on. Come on. And then you would go ahead and use a Subterra Final Battle's 3rd effect to power up Umistrix to 4700 attack. The 2 Union Attacks will give the Vassal a total of, what is that? 90... let's see, 95... oh, hold on. 45 would be 90, 46 is 92. So the 2 Union Attacks would give Vassal a total of 9400 attack points off of just the Umistrix. Any other 3rd monster would give Vassal enough to go over 10,000. But if you have 2 final battles and you want to get really fancy, go ahead and double the power of your Stigacraken to 4,000. This gives your Vassal a total of, what is that, 8,700 times 2... 17,400? Excuse me. 17,400, I believe. So, alright, well that's... yeah, if you want to make absolutely sure that this deck can work, just stick a secret pass to the treasures then. It's not required in apparently 99% of situations, but if he decides to be a smart ass and fusion summon 2 of these things right at the end of the duel, not much you can do about that. So, there we go. I lose. He's going to do something during his turn. And, yeah, whatever. I really don't care. Yeah, he's just going to let me deck out, so there we go. Well, like I said, it was going great up until he did that. Up until the very last turn, so... I'm going to count that as a successful farm, because the strategy... Like, I did everything right, basically. I mean, maybe if I had activated Deslakuta a few times more or a few times less, I would have been able to get around it because I would have had more time to deal with the Millenniumizer Strix, or just gotten to the end point of the duel before he could have summoned them, but I didn't know. How was I supposed to know he was going to fusion summon 2 of them back to back like that? I've never seen him fusion summon 2 at once. Or, I mean, to be fair, I've usually gotten rid of one before he has time to summon a second one, but anyway. That's basically how you were supposed to farm him, minus that last turn, as I keep saying. And yeah, that is the fantastic Pegasus event. So, with that, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all had a great time, and I hope you all have a great day. And I will see you all in the next one.